My name is Owenkosi Kudla. I am in IB1. I am from the Kingdom of Eswatini, but I am not alone. I am not running the show alone. I have my co-moderator, and I believe I will hand over to him so he can introduce himself.
Thank you, Owe, for that. Good evening, everyone. And my name is Lindelwan Jagala. I'm also from the Kingdom of Eswatini, just like Owe. And I've been here since Form 1 and I'm in Form 5. And I'm pretty excited for this debate. Thank you. I think I'll start with the bios. So, Marion Prinsley attended Waterford, Kamhlaba between the end of 1968 and the end of 1970, together with her brother David Schlapobrsky. This was a very troubled time in our own history, and in some ways in the history of the school. WK was still in its infancy and had just started to admit girls, a challenging time for some of us staff and pupils, she writes. Politics in South Africa was vicious. Her family had lived in Swaziland from the late 1950s, but in 1969, her oldest brother, John, a university student in South Africa, was in prison, tortured, and held in solitary confinement in Pretoria. We are shortly to mark the anniversary of John's imprisonment, and he has written of his experience in a book which will be launched on the 13th of June, the 52nd anniversary. She and her brother David left WK in November 1970, and at the age of 14, she moved to a boarding school in the UK where she completed her schooling before undertaking a degree in psychology and a teaching qualification. In 1983, she trained as an educational psychologist, and since then she has worked in this capacity, gaining her doctorate in educational psychology much later whilst working. Her working life has been devoted to working with children with additional needs, life-limited children, and those with a wide range of emotional and behavioral difficulties. Since 1996, her and her family have lived in Norfolk, a large English county in the capital city of Norwich. This is an ancient city with a strong medieval history. She is a member of the small Jewish community there, which she has led for many years, and in which she continues to establish a Jewish community and heritage center. Jewish history stretches back here 1,000 years, some of it not very pleasant. I have worked hard towards interfaith education in the city and to ensure that we all strive towards increased religious tolerance and understanding. At the moment, I'm working to establish an Equality and Human Rights Council in the county, she says. In 2019, she was appointed Sheriff of Norwich, a medieval title stretching back to 1404, now an honorary role involving attending events on behalf of the city dressed up in medieval attire. She's also an appointed Deputy Lieutenant for Norfolk, an official representative of the Crown in the country.
And David Schlapobrsky. David attended Waterford during the period of 1969 to the end of 1970 with his sister Marion Prinsley. He proceeded to establish lifelong studio Potter with his partner Felicity Potter from the 1980s, where they've been involved in township and community development, in particular interest in the role and value of the arts. They have also been active during various states of emergency and the events engulfing the country in general, and the Alexandra Township in particular. They were part of the original group instrumental in the establishment of the Alexandra Arts Center with Bill Ainsley and others from the Johannesburg Arts Foundation. And the broader progressive arts community were active at the time. They have been involved for a lengthy periods in the care of people in need, with special cares and various community arts programs over the years in Johannesburg, Alexandra, and Swellendam in the Western Cape, where they now live and have their
Moroke Rocky Habide was born in Everton in the Vaal district of then Transvaal, South Africa in 1958 to a family of teacher parents. He moved to Eswatini in 1961, soon after the Sharpeville massacre, where he grew up, studied and worked in Swaziland for 52 years and only returned to South Africa in 2013. He did his primary school at Lesotho Primary and St. Joseph's Primary before moving to WK in 1971 as a boarder, where he studied all the way to A levels and graduated in 1976. While he was at Waterford, he was head of Henderson and head of the school, where he was part of the triumvirate of sharing the responsibility between the heads of the house. Additionally, he made the soccer co-captain in 1976 and athletics middle distance teams. His other interests include the soul club and the jazz club. He continued on to study Bachelor of Social Sciences, majoring in economics and geography at the University of Botswana and Swaziland, the first of only two to do that combination, and accidentally both ex-WK students. Moroke notes that was what was offered only because they both wanted to do urban planning, which at the time was not offered as an undergraduate degree. So this was meant to be a path in that direction. He dropped out of his program to pursue BCom, Management and Accounting from the University of Eswatini, after which he pursued certificates, Business of Marketing for the music industry and Publishing in the music industry from WITS+. Moroke has worked in banking in the credit department of Standard Chartered Bank and Union Bank Swaziland in construction, accounting of some HR at various civils, construction and road marking companies, as well as in retail, pharmaceuticals and other chemicals, FMCG and furniture. He established Millennium Financial Services and currently runs a recording studio and record label. He is currently setting up a label services constancy for independent musicians. He volunteers in numerous positions, including as part-time lecturer to first-year DABS Diploma in Accounting and Business Studies students at UNISWA, as a tutor and gatekeeper at a college in Matsapa, as a member of the executive pro of Moneni Pirates for 5 years, and as founder of vice chair of Milas Micro Lenders Association of Swaziland, now defunct.
Relitza Dikova. Relitza is a Waterford survivor, having attended the college from Form 1 to IB2 in the years 2003 to 2009. She went on to pursue sociology research studies at Brown University, followed by a period at the United Nations office at Geneva. After obtaining her Master's of Science degree in Global Health from the University of Geneva, she moved back to Eswatini in 2018 to work on the area of HIV testing. She worked on the introduction and scale-up of HIV self-testing devices in Eswatini, both working with the Ministry of Health on HIV testing policy and as well as an operational level. Currently, she works as a data analyst for a large international public health organization. Relitza enjoys reading, gardening, and dancing, and is passionate about keeping up the WK connection and generally building and sustaining networks.
Selethio Ndakirutimana is a marketing and sales operations representative at Caterpillar's Western Africa district. He graduated from Waterford Kamhlaba in 2011 and holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from Harvard University.
And lastly, introducing one of our very own, Sisegelo Mlotsa. Sisegelo Mlotsa is an Eswatini born and bred national. He has been a member of the Waterford Kamhlaba UWC community for the past 5 years and is currently in his final year of the International Baccalaureate Diploma Program. Waterford Kamhlaba UWCSA has allowed him to further develop holistically by allowing him the opportunity to be a part of teams that organize events and keep the community informed on the happenings of the world through engaging and collaborative participation. He currently serves as the TEDx UWC SA Executive Producer and Outreach Manager, UWC Africa Week Chief Executive and Executive Operations and Logistics, and a fellow support academic tutor, tutoring fellow students in economics. He has served as a member of both the IGCSE and IBDP Orientation Committee and is proactive in various sporting activities. Outside Waterford Kamhlaba UWCSA, he has attended the African Leadership Academy Model African Union as a delegate and is set to attend the Yale Young Global Scholars Summer Program in June 2021 within politics, law, and economics session, amongst many other things. His interests lie in finance and socio-economic development fields. As such, strongly feels against injustices such as poverty and gender-based violence that are evident throughout the globe. He has a desire to pursue a chartered accountant and chartered financial analyst profession in the near future, which will enable him to play his part driving and sustaining Africa's economy and subsequently the global economy. And I am very proud to introduce to everyone, these are our panelists for tonight. And I will be handing over to Lindelwa, and we shall start the questions and henceforth start the debate. Thank you.
Our first questions for the night are, could you describe yourself in 1 to 2 sentences, and how did you end up at WK?
How do I describe myself? That's very hard. It's hard to describe yourself, and I must apologize. I didn't realize you'd read out that whole bio, otherwise I've written something much shorter. But anyway, so I've worked all my life in education. I've got a very strong sense of civic duty, and I work all hours of the day and night to try and make a positive difference in everything I do. And I'm sure that can be traced back to my Waterford company for a few years. I hope it can. I think it can. How did I end up there? I don't know. I was very young. I went there at the age of 12. It was a natural place for a child who was in school in Swaziland. I lived in Swaziland. It was a great honor to be accepted to Waterford Kamhlaba. Even then, I presume it's the same thing now. It was a very great honor to be accepted, and it was a privilege to go there, even though it was a difficult time.
Thank you, Marion, for that.
David, you can go next.
Oh, you're on mute.
Gosh, again, it's a difficult thing to describe yourself, you know. You always see yourself very different to the way other people see you. Busy chap, very busy, lifelong busyness in all sorts of things, but central to all of that has been a life of making pots and working with people. We come from quite a supercharged family, Marion and I, so we were sort of ready for the Waterford experience, I suppose. We had parents who were active through the 50s, even the 40s, actually. So that's even before we were born. And we were preloaded, actually, for the Waterford time, but coming from quite a stressed background as well. I don't know that I want to say too much about myself. Let's see where the discussion takes us and see what value we can add to the Waterford experience that we all have in common. What I would really like to say is I should have worn my tie. I see there's only one tie here. I see. Next time, we'll make a plan.
Thank you. Moreka, you can go next.
Muting.
You are muted.
Firstly, if you call me Moroccan, nobody will know who I am. Everybody knew me throughout Waterford as Rocky.
Rocky.
Yeah. Okay, Rocky is a husband, a father, a grandfather, and I think most importantly, I see myself as a lover of jazz. And why jazz? Because for me, jazz equates to life. It's all about improvisation. Just like life, there's all sorts of twists and turns. You never know where they'd hit you. But if you know how to improvise, you'll get through to the end. But you definitely ain't gonna come out of life alive. Okay, jazz makes sense half the time, a lot of the time it doesn't. But you need to enjoy it anyway. How did I end up at Waterford? My parents were both teachers. I particularly mentioned the primary schools that I went to. Almost rural primary schools. And it was standard in our time that if you were doing fairly well, you'd be told if you continue working hard, you might just make it to Waterford. So in my last year of primary school, I was actually instructed to apply to Waterford, which I did. I was, invited to the interview, entrance test, which I passed, sort of, and got into Waterford. But there's a twist to the story. 30 years later, after my mother passed on, and I'm going through all her effects, I find a little diary which belonged to my father, and it was a 1965 diary. Now, I had known that my father and Michael Stern had both taught at St. Peter's, but in different times. My father in the late 90s and Mike Stern in the mid-late 50s. But what I didn't know is that they knew each other and that my father had actually been in the first government council. I only find this out 30 years after I left. Nobody told me that anytime during my 6 years. So there was nepotism, but I never got to know. That's how I got to it. That's my story.
Good story.
That's a very good story, Maraka. Thank you. Could we please have Selefio next?
Yes, Lindelo, and thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to see so many folks who went through Waterford before and are currently going through that experience. And certainly connecting with you all is a great and pleasurable experience. So how do I describe myself? I see myself as a young entrepreneur who's working to contribute to Burundi and Africa's realization of their potential. I think we'll discuss later today in terms of what we've learned from Waterford and the impact that the school has had on us. But I think for me, one of them was the realization that you could make an impact regardless of how old you are, where you come from, and a lot of other limitations. And so how did I get to Waterford? I don't know. Maybe John Storer made a mistake. I didn't think I was qualified for Waterford, throughout my time at the school. And so just to keep the story short, I got a scholarship from the High Life Foundation of the Masiyiwa family back in 2009. And that helped me come to Waterford. And of course, John Storer came to Burundi, ran the selection process. And at some point I learned he made a mistake of selecting me. And here I am.
Thank you so much, Selefio. Could we please have Ralitza?
Good evening, everyone, or good morning, depending on where you're coming in from. I'll keep it brief about myself. Maybe just one thing about me to describe myself. I'm a big believer of taking the opportunities that are presented to you. I think there's a lot of good stuff that can come out of going for that coffee meeting, going to that panel discussion, attending that conference, going to that dance class, and all the connections that are made there. So that's just one thing about myself. Other than that, I ended up at Waterford because we emigrated from Bulgaria to South Africa in '96, and then we emigrated again, came to Eswatini in 2000. And so I was living here. I went to a primary school here, private school. And then I guess I did the entrance test. I don't quite remember it. Maybe my parents remember it better. But then, I ended up there from 2003 to 2009, the Form 1 up until IB2, Waterford Survivor, as I found out it's called. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Belitska. Now we have, last but not least, Sisegelo Mlotsa, our very own.
All right, thank you. To describe myself, I would say I'm respectful, integral, hard, and smart working. And I'm constantly looking to improve in all aspects, so as to allow me to give back by driving, various economies, the global economy, I'd say. How I ended up at Waterford. So I saw the advertisement, of course, in the newspaper, I think it was. And then my mom encouraged me to apply and write the entrance test during the first session so as to increase my chances of getting in. I guess that worked. And funny enough, I guess due to a lack of knowledge, I applied on the day to be in Form 1, and I was a grade 7 at the time. So I was basically applying to get into the same grade. And by luck, I guess I got accepted into Form 2 a month later. So I guess maybe Mr. Story made a mistake there again. But that's pretty much my story, and it's been quite an informative and mind-opening journey since 2016.
And I believe now to get actually into the debate, well, sort of debate, my next question is, the current generations have been classified as the traditionalists from 1925 to 1945, baby boomers from 1945 to 1964, Generation X from 1964 to 1980, and the millennials from 1980 to 1999. If you were to place yourself here, where would you place yourself? And I believe we will go in the exact order we started with.
Okay, so without doubt, I suppose David and I would be baby boomers. Our dad was a soldier in the Second World War for the Allied forces. He was involved in a number of big offensives in Italy, and we were born, I was born, what was I born? I was born in 1956, 11 years after the Second World War. David was even, what was that, 8 years after the Second World War finished.
Yeah.
So we were definitely baby boomers.
Baby boomers. That's us.
I really have no idea what those labels mean, baby boomer, Generation X. So I'm going to, in typical Waterford fashion, I'll redefine myself as a booming Gen X. I've always hung out with the people a lot younger than myself. Born in the 50s, most of my friends much later. My 2 stints at varsity, I don't quite know who is my age because they were all schoolmates, classmates. So, I've got some very old friends and some very young ones. Who's next?
It's late.
And yeah, I'm in the millennials category.
Myself as well, I'm theoretically, or not theoretically, but I guess I am a millennial like Rocky, though I haven't read the literature on what that's supposed to mean. I know millennials don't like taking phone calls or making phone calls. So if it's going by that classification, then I'm not really a millennial. That's it.
Can I jump in, although I've already spoke? I mean, if that's, I haven't read the literature as well, and so if the definition of a millennial is someone who doesn't make phone call and send text, I'm not one of them, because I like my phone call and yeah.
No, yeah, it's more of a one of those things that they say about us, but we're all very different.
And I disagree, by the way. Yeah, I think we agree there. Yeah.
I'd also have to identify as a millennial, despite being born in the year 2002.
All right, and I believe the next question is, cultural trends and heroes often influence the thinking of different generational groups and the trajectory they take. What are some of the trends that influenced your time at Waterford?
Okay, so this is quite a difficult question. Should David and I answer it together? I'll kick off. Waterford in 1968-69 was a complicated place because it was transitioning from a boys' school, a newly formed boys' school, to accepting girls. And it was moving from an experimental educational setting into a fully established school. And I don't think there was that much thought given to that. It just kind of evolved and it happened. So there were a number of things that affected me. I mean, I can still remember, I don't know whether you still have this, perhaps you can answer this, Sisekelo. Do you still have something called service or community service as part of the school every week?
Yeah, and that's quite a big thing at Waterford. So yeah, we try to have that at the center of everything that we do.
So that's really interesting because I so clearly remember my first experience of learning to dig with a shovel and a spade, and we made the pathways up to the rondavels, which is where the girls slept. There were no dormitories. There were 8 girls when I arrived in 1968. And we made the pathways to the rondavels, and we did, I can't even remember what else we did, but every week we were digging, I seem to remember.
We were in the vegetable garden.
Vegetable garden. We had to clean the classrooms every day. We took it in the rota. There was no cleaner. I don't know whether that's still the case, but we had to clean the classrooms. Is that still the case now?
Not entirely.
Not entirely.
Yeah, the gardening does.
School's grown up a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, so what were the cultural trends? I mean, Waterford was very unusual. Perhaps, David, you'll talk about the fact that it was a school without any corporal punishment. Now, that sounds terrible, doesn't it? But we went to St. Mark's before Waterford. I went to a primary school in Malkerns before that. And I wasn't beaten badly at St. Mark's, but the boys were really thrashed. When you came to Waterford, it just didn't happen. There was no corporal punishment.
It was a different environment, completely. It was a different culture, different climate. It was almost unimaginable for people like us. The cultural trends. We can carry on with that theme of cultural trends from our side and talk about the late 1960s, the peace generation, the hippies, the flower children, the peace, all of that, bucking the system. That was the time. We were breaking the rules. The school broke the rules by establishing itself in the face of huge oppression in this country. And I think many of us took the example of the school and began to test the system.
And David, you were actually at St. Martin's before, weren't you?
Yeah, that's where Michael Stern was before he began Waterford. He was at St. Martin's, and I spent a couple of years there before going to Waterford.
So we really are historical items on the screen, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah. Michael Stern, I think the Richardsons were at St. Martin's, and I think perhaps Dion Glover.
I don't know.
Yeah, I've forgotten all. Yeah, but that he moved with a big team of people from Joburg to begin the school. Marion and I were actually at the official opening of the school in 1963. Our parents had an invitation from the school to attend, and we sat there under the big, I think it was wattle trees up at the top near the staff room, which is where we knew the staff room, sort of between where the staff room was and the swimming pool. And we listened to.
Thank you so much, David. I think we should hand over to Rocky to answer the question.
Just to quickly recap, or just to follow up on what David said. Incidentally, the two other biggest Anglican schools in Swaziland, as you probably know, Waterford was pinned on Anglican tradition. Are St. Michael's and St. Christopher's, both of which were actually established after St. Peter's was closed.
I think Mark is having Wi-Fi issues. Can you please carry on to Leithion?
Yeah. So for me, I wouldn't say I was, impacted more by trends, but by heroes. And Lawrence Noda, who was our principal at the time, always told us about Nelson Mandela, and he would quote some passages from the Long Walk to Freedom, the autobiography that Nelson Mandela wrote. And so that really impacted me in many ways, because, Mr. Noda would talk about the service that Nelson Mandela rendered to his country, his positivity, that change was possible, even though it wasn't easy. And he will connect that to the community service that we were doing in some communities in Swaziland. And that really started showing me that actually it's very possible to make a change. It's not gonna be easy. And that, you cannot imagine how much that impacted me since I left Waterford, In fact, during my second year at Waterford, I helped create the national committee, the UWC National Committee in Burundi, my country, based on the kind of things that Mr. Noda was telling us in the assemblies every Wednesday morning, and these quotes that he was making about Nelson Mandela's work. And that has guided me since then, and the work that I've done in Burundi or communities beyond, because I've been involved with the United Nations Global Education Movement. And so, I trace all that work to the impact Nelson Mandela stories had on me during my time at Waterford.
So for myself, I'm just looking at the time, and I think we have quite a lot more interesting stuff to get to. I'm very interested in hearing about Sisegelo's experience, who's after me, so I'll defer if I may pass.
All right. Cisco?
Right. For me, I would say the cultural trends that ended up influencing my time at Waterford and still do would be ethical leadership. and that's from attaining leadership positions within Waterford. I think that truly allows us as students to develop holistically and not just within the classroom. I think the slang, of course, how we speak, and then the energy during these events, just the positive atmosphere keeps you in a good mood for the most part. And then, I'd like to also highlight that we live in ever-changing times. So I do believe that our generation, well, at least the people that are within my cohort here, did develop their own trends. But that's pretty much what I would say for this.
So I think we can briefly and shortly return it back to Rocky before we move on to the next question.
Sorry, you can see I'm in the BBT, born before technology. But anyway, what I was saying is that we moved from Woodstock in my time, from short back and sides to bell bottoms and high heel sneakers. But right in the center of that was Soweto 76. So, it was all about freeing ourselves. And in between Woodstock and 76, there was a rising Black consciousness. I'm not sure if the term had actually been coined or was widely in use at the time, but it was festering all the time. A lot of African countries were regaining some sort of independence from colonial masters. So there was generally that shift from a colonial mentality, if you want to call it that, to a new identity for all of us. Swaziland itself had just gained independence some 3, 4, 5 years before. So we were caught in transition. And I think later on, as we go on, I think it's, I'll speak a bit about how it was involved in other transitions within Waterford, particularly the changing of the guard, when Michael Stern left, acting and new principles and that kind of story.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Morake. Just a reminder that can we please keep our answers short and sweet? And moving on to the next question is, this is directed to Sisegelo and Ralitza. You had WK at different times, even though some of your times here may overlap. What were some defining moments or events during your time at WK, and how did these influence your Kamhlaba experience? How would you say your different experiences at Waterford formed your attitudes, values, and beliefs?
Okay, I can.
Okay, go for it.
All right, cool. I strongly believe that undertaking the IBDP at Waterford truly shaped who I became and still is to this day. With regards to my thinking process and just being self-aware, that's more or less related to TOK, but I would say that has truly helped me know who I am. And then just being a part of teams, working with a lot of people, to plan successful events and so forth, has truly helped me understand who I am outside of the classroom. So be it Asia Week, Africa Week, the TEDx events and so forth. I think that has helped me understand myself better and truly define me. So yeah.
And for myself, I've already heard some of my fellow panelists talking about both sports and ComServe, community service. Those were some of the, especially sports. I can maybe focus on sports, which was some of the most sort of defining moments for me, because from, a group of us girls choosing to do So I was on the soccer and on the volleyball teams. And, you know, from the trainings to the local tournaments to the international tournaments, the bonding that happened there, the teamwork, that was really special. And that's something that I've been looking for after leaving Waterford as well, sort of meeting with people and being active and bonding through sports. And then in terms of the community service as well, where that's also really shaped how I'd like to approach the world. I remember hearing about this community service thing and arriving as a 12, 13-year-old and already asking the teachers, you know, how can I do ComServe? And they're like, oh, it's reserved for the IBs. I was like, why? But I was very eager about that. And that's something else that I've also sought after leaving Waterford. What can I do in my free time that's giving back to the community, and that's involving myself more in the community that I'm in.
Thank you. And I think the next question is directed to David and Rocky. Waterford's foundation was meant to disrupt the status quo. How can we continue to effect disruptive innovation as students and alumni?
You first, David.
Who's going first?
You go first.
Shall I? I don't know how it is you got to me with this very question. Well, I think Waterford's whole basis was to disrupt the status quo. It started out under such difficult conditions against such enormous odds in a very hostile world with ideas that were almost from outer space. We absorbed those ideas, we absorbed the values, and they became part of all of us who went through the school in one way or another. I don't think one needs to take direct and conscious action to foster that. I think it's done by example and by the way the system functions. It's a fantastic question, but it's really impossible to answer in a sensible way without implicating myself in all sorts of terrible things.
I think possibly the terminology disruptive is a little dicey there. I think Waterford was founded on social justice, not really to disrupt anything. Not really to disrupt in the true sense of apartheid. It was basically to eradicate it, but it was based on social justice on all issues, particularly race, class, race, class. I've been discussing this with a lot of my contemporaries, and one of the other things that Waterford, we knew that there were people there, very vast income and wealth gaps. But the minute 2-3 days after you stepped on that campus, it wouldn't show. For example, in my time, everybody got R4.20 pocket money for the term, R4.20, and you didn't even get that in cash. It was in credit at the tuck shop. So even if you had money in your pocket, nobody knew about it. Those are the kind of things that, for me, Waterford was then, and I'd like to think it still is now. Did I answer the question?
You answered the question perfectly. Thank you. This question is directed to Marion and Mr. Laythio. How can the different generations increase their appreciation of one another to continue the legacy of Waterford Kamhlaba and the values instilled.
Marianne, you wanna go ahead or should I go? Well, let me just share my thoughts. I think this kind of exchange, this type of conversation, you know, it creates an opportunity for us to appreciate each other. And so I would say for me, it's if we can establish platforms for the different generations to collaborate and work with each other and share ideas. You know, there's a lot of experience they have that we don't. And there are things we are learning about new technologies or different new ways of doing things that may not come very quickly to them given their background. And so I would say, let's increase the collaboration and try to find solutions to issues and challenges together.
Thank you. I agree with all of that. From my perspective, though, I think just by its very existence and founded as it was on the principles of social justice, as was said earlier, just by living the experience of a school which is totally non-discriminatory and has hugely important value placed on duty and community service, just by living that experience, Waterford continues to instill that in its pupils. And I'm really I'm so delighted to hear that this business of service and community service is so instilled in everybody now. I've had a couple of direct messages about that from current students, I presume. And thank you for those messages, because for me, that's probably, apart from the fact that it's anti-apartheid, you know, stance that it took at that time was so important, which hopefully is less important now because we're all living a much more multiracial world, a much more multiracial world. Living it is the most important thing. And if the school is still doing that, then well done, Waterford Kamhlaba. That's all I can say.
Thank you so much. And our last few questions, if you could answer these in 30 seconds, that would be great. So each and every one of you, I know it's a tough ask, but please. And we will go in the very same order from the beginning, but we will cue you to remind you. And the question is, what strategies do you think are needed, whether formally or informally, to bridge the generational gaps in the workplace, in the alumni community, and in society in general? So I think we will toss it back to you, Marianne.
Okay, so as I said before, I don't think really formal strategies are needed, but I do think the opportunity to share ideas, such as in a forum like this, is incredibly helpful because, you know, a school like Waterford, even 50 or more years that I was there ago, more than 50 years ago I was there, but it stays in me. And when I'm digging in my garden now, I'm still reminding myself of digging the pathways at Waterford. So I don't think strategies that are needed, but communication channels, really. And I think this is a really good initiative that you've taken, and I commend you for it.
And we will move on to David.
Mute.
Okay, there you are. I couldn't agree more. I think this is a fantastic initiative. I think it's the sort of thing we need to be doing. We need to be opening this communication channel up so that we can pass on to the generations from the previous, you know. I think it's absolutely excellent. Well done. Keep it going.
And I think Ralitza is next.
Well, really, this is one of my favorite things to take part in and talk about, essentially building and sustaining the network, learning from your older, learning from your elders, learning from the elders, learning from the younger generation, and sort of helping and supporting each other. Because I mean, we rarely get to any place or achieve most of our goals on our own. You know, it's through working together and keeping that open-mindedness that we were taught at Waterford. So, you know, like the previous panelists, I really appreciate that Waterford is making strides in really building this rich alumni community that we have. It makes a world of a difference. You know, it's the same with my university in the States. They do such a great job of just giving us opportunities to connect. And if you're the kind of person that would like to connect and learn and give opportunities to others as well in your network, that platform is there. What I've realized is not the same with all schools. So we are lucky, and we do thank you again.
And Rocky?
I think what I need to say here is that we each need to realize that actually having been to Waterford is a privilege. And Waterford people are totally, you go anywhere, they're totally different. They have a Waterford mindset. But it's important that we wear that privilege very, very carefully. I lived in Swaziland, where I said, Patricia actually, I listened to an interview she did on the radio yesterday, I think it was. She mentioned Waterford being on the hill. Now that being on the hill is both geographical and it's actually figurative. There's an attitude that Waterford people are up there, looking down on everybody else. That is what we need to change. How we do it, and I know we've been doing it for the last 50 years, but it has to be done. But you know, as I said, community service is part of it, but not at the top down, not in the top down. We need to find out what those communities really need and do it for them, not for our own, you know, gratification.
And Salathiel.
Yes, I agree with the other speakers. I think we've been very privileged to go to Waterford, and a platform like this is absolutely fantastic to help us reconnect, and not only with other alumni, but also with our lovely school. But you did mention the workplace and society as well in your question. And so my recommendation would be that we also reach out to those outside of the Waterford community. If you've been with Waterford, connecting with folks from other generations, from other cultures comes naturally. That's one of the things that I really got out of my experience at the school. But not everybody in community, in our workplaces, actually has had that privilege. And so I think we all could go out a little more, reach out a little more to make sure that folks are comfortable around us, and that we help intentionally create a welcoming environment where we are.
And lastly, Cisco.
Right. So my response is more or less related to the workplace, like Salathiel's. And you know, I truly believe that the truth is that, you know, there are few firms that have young leaders in today's world. And I think that the older generation should begin to view maybe the younger generation's young age as an asset and not a liability, more especially in the workplace, like I've mentioned. And that's because the new ideas are needed, you know, for firms to continue to drive economic growth and so forth, socioeconomic growth as well, taking into account the fact that we live in an ever-changing world. So I truly believe that the expertise of the older generation and, you know, the fresh new ideas that the younger generation brings could result in a very successful future for the world. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Very good.
Thank you so much, everyone, for those wonderful answers. I think we'll open the floor to anyone who has questions.
And to add, even comments, if you have anything to say, please do mention it in the chat. And if you must, and if you would like to, unmute and just say a few words. Please freely unmute and say anything, really.
I'd like to thank
Hi, thanks for the panel. That's great. Really wonderful. Thank you very much for organizing this opportunity for us to get together. I think just to echo some of the thoughts that have been mentioned before, in essence, and maybe just to give a contribution or a little contribution on my side in terms of underpinning those thoughts. I think Waterford was a great place for open-mindedness, as has been said before. It was innovative in exploring new ideas, especially in the category of social justice and social equity. So the whole issue about one humanity, one justice, one social equity is one of their most important underpinning grundnorms of the school. And I think a lot of the panelists have actually reiterated that in different forms. And maybe one of the things that we ought to be thinking about is trying to get some sort of foundation going for active social justice and the promotion of those ideas, a foundation for social equity, social justice, based on a number of different areas in terms of climate change, justice for others who are suffering injustices, and innovation in general in that particular social justice arena. Because I think the social service element was very strong in Waterford's underpinning. And maybe that's one thing that we could do. Some of the younger set have been talking about the contribution towards global economy, economic experience, fortitude, and progress and development, which is great. But I think it needs to be underpinned more about some of the core social values that underpin the school in the first instance. And that's just my threepence. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? We'll allow one more and we'll give that person 30 seconds. All right, going once. Going twice.
We need more time for these 2 hours, not 1 hour.
Okay, God, we will open a few breakout rooms at the end for chat at the end of it. But before we close, I think anyone who has attended the speaker series for the past few months knows how fond I am of our new principal. So I would really, really love to hear a few words from her, and hence why I will just quickly hand over to our lovely principal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ewenkosi. Although I expressly asked to stay in the background this time because I think it's important that I have the opportunity to listen, to learn from all of you. And, I've heard the word privilege spoken, I think, by all of you as panelists, and it definitely is a huge honor and privilege for me to lead Waterford at this juncture. And to give it a sort of different spin, perhaps, than my predecessors, all men before me, have done. So thank you so much to all of you who have been here this evening. I continue to learn, and I continue to want to have Waterford seen by the world, but especially in Eswatini, as a place that is accessible to all. And that's why I mentioned Roque, to come down from our hill sometimes and be part of the community that we really should be very grateful that the kingdom has offered us this possibility to exist in 1963 and onwards. And I certainly will be spending a lot of time down from the hill to understand my environment and what perhaps I can learn from where I am and serve All of you have talked very much about service, and I think it underpins all that we do. So Marion, you and I share a birthday. Birthday year, yes.
Same year.
Same year.
Wow. I've never met anybody else who shares my birthday.
So we have two bookends here.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this evening.
It's been a huge privilege to join you. Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming, especially the panelists. It's been an honor meeting you all. I personally have learned a lot from this panel, and the fact that community service is instilled in everyone's life and making changes in people's communities is the Waterford way. Thank you. I think we'll stay on if people want to stay on, but everyone's free to go. And again, thank you for coming, and thank you to the panelists.
I think just to echo what my co-moderator has said, I am extremely grateful. I've actually learned a lot and picked up a lot of things that are just going to help me as I continue my Waterford journey, and especially understanding that it is indeed a privilege. And even though many a times we do speak about, being on the hill and being in the Waterford bubble, I think, it's something we can work on. And as much as there's good and bad to that bubble, I think, if we focus on the good, we'll miss out on opportunities to work on the little things that we actually can improve on. So I think this is just motive to continue, raising that community flag high.
Can I possibly just say thank you to our two moderators tonight? You've done a fantastic job, and also to the Alumni office who found me and managed to get me here. Well done to all of you.
Thank you so much.
I'll give you a thumbs up if I can remember.
Just to say also, anytime you are in Swaziland, take a little trip up the hill and see what's happening.
Well, it's tempting. If I could leave the UK, I would come like a shot. I would love to come. As soon as I can, I will.
Well, just to echo my fellow panelists' comments. So thank you so much to the moderators. You did a fantastic job, and thanks to the team at the development office for bringing us together. Let's do more of this, and in the future, I think we can leverage these platforms. When we can be there physically, I think it would be great to come back. But if we can't, let's keep doing this. I think it's amazing. Again,
do you ever do an in-person alumni event?
An event, I think, back in 2010 when I was at Waterford.
Okay.
I'm not sure if they've done another one afterwards.
Hi, thank you for that question. Actually, unfortunately in 2020 we were not able. Oh, hi everyone. My name is Nosumilo, and I am the Alumni Engagement Officer. I guess it's a good time to say thank you to everybody for attending. And there was so many insightful comments and thoughts tonight. And we as the Advancement Office and Alumni Engagement are always open to thoughts, suggestions, comments, even a quick Zoom call if you want to share some ideas with us. And yes, we do have some face-to-face ones. Unfortunately, we have not had any because of COVID. And we hope that once things have settled down and we've had our vaccines to 68%, and we have some semblance of normal, we will start having them face-to-face again. And just to then use this opportunity to say we have a couple of speaker series that are ongoing, so please join us. We have an alumni portal. I shared it on the chat. It's wkalumni.com. And what we hope that will be is a space where we can share our stories, where we can hopefully have like some podcast audio situations going on in the future, because we do realize that there are so many exciting stories. Tonight was an example of like the fact that it can take hours to hear all the stories that our alumni have to share. So we really want to hear them, we really want to share them, and we really want to welcome you to the Heal, not just virtually, but face-to-face. So please subscribe to the wkalumni.com site. And finally, while I have you here, as we build up to Michael's dance centenary celebration in 2022 and the 60th anniversary in 2023, I do hope you're marking your calendars to join us on the Heal, and hopefully we'll all have our vaccines by then, or not if you don't believe in that. But yes, thank you for that question, Marian. And I really look forward to getting to know each and every alumni on this call, and even more so, my email is always open. Thank you.